Welcome and thank you all for joining. The attendee count is well over the triple figures now. I think it's time we get started. So, good evening, good afternoon to all our attendees from across the globe. Thank you for being here and taking the time to join our webinar on reimagining SAP testing with Digital Labs. This is Jacob, your host for today from KTern. This is our second webinar in the Reimagining series, preceded by a webinar on SAP project management. Do feel free to check out our recording and the slides in our website. A few things to note before we get started. We'll be sending out a link to the recording of the webinar to everyone who has registered. It will also be available on our website at a later point in time. All participants have been muted upon entry, so please ask your questions via the Q&A tab at any point during the webinar, and we'll address them at the end. We also have a couple of polls in between. Please do participate in them so that we can better understand your expectations and make this webinar more relevant to you all. For those of you joining us for the first time, KTern is a DXaaS or a digital transformation as a service product tailor-made for the SAP community. It is a cognitive digital workplace which drives SAP digital transformations across each phase of the digital transformation journey. Moving on, the speaker for today's webinar is Mr. Ratnakumar Nagarajan. He is a digital transformation expert who has over 25 years of experience and has donned several caps in his extensive career. He is the co-founder and director of Car Technologies, an SAP consulting firm. He has been a project manager and the head of business development and marketing operations, and has also been part of two successful startup exits in the US. Currently, he is the chief product officer and director, and an overall amazing professional to work with at KTern, where he leads a young team with a mission to inspire and democratize digital transformations as a service. On that note, I would like to hand over the session to Ratna. Ratna, the forum is yours.
Thank you, Jacob. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thanks for taking the time to come into this webinar. I have 10 minutes of context setting with the slides, and then around 30-35 minutes, I will do a quick demo of the platform that we have. And then I can take up questions as well. And my team is also connected. So if you have any questions during the presentation or demo, please feel free to use the tab and someone will keep responding. And I will also respond at the end of the presentation. Just a quick check on audio, video, slides. Jacob, is everything okay?
Good, Ratna, clear.
All right, thank you. So I want to set some context before we get into the actual presentation. KTern is a cognitive digital workplace. And when I say that, it means it's really cognitive in the sense it is made for SAP transformations. It could be anything, moving from a greenfield, a brownfield, or an existing SAP install. It could be anything, right? And looking at the last 25 years or 27 years I've been in SAP, and it's fascinating how technology has evolved over time. When I was a kid, and I'm sure most of you would be able to relate to that, no one had a cell phone around me, right? And now, and those days it was one telephone line or a landline they used to call, and that was used only in terms of urgent talks or conversation that you want to have with someone. And then back then it was more of FM radio and audio cassettes, and internet was still theoretical. Now, fast forward in the last 15 to 20 years right now, what we are looking at in terms of the third platform or the evolution of the internet along with the cloud has brought in a huge change in terms of how businesses can be reimagined. And if you really look at it, typically the value that was driven to the end customer was one full vertical stack, meaning the value chain right from the sourcing to to the end consumerization was with monolithic companies, and that stack is getting broken now. And you see new players emerging, and the business getting completely redefined. So it's really exponential. The technology growth is quite exponential in terms of what it can bring to the table. And it gets really difficult for a CIO, and I see a lot of my CIO friends and vice presidents who are responsible for IT who have come into this webinar. I the kind of technology that has evolved, it makes it difficult to understand what and where the use cases are. And typically, we kind of tend to underestimate the digital trends that's happening around. And this is more specific to SAP, and SAP as a product is also evolving in terms of the intelligent enterprises, the connected manufacturing setup, and things like that. So if you really look at the business architecture in the last 10 to 15 years, it has shifted tremendously in terms of how things are getting done. Your supply chain getting redefined, and there is always a possibility of innovation and making it better. And if you look at individuals, we have transformed with the usage of cell phones and the internet and things like that. And it's the same kind of disruption that's happening across the globe. And being in SAP for 25 years, we realized that there has to be a platform, there has to be something that can take the customer or take everyone in terms of understanding what the change is happening and how do we go about it, how do we implement that with the help of a platform. And that's the KTern, where it's quite cognitive. It connects to your existing landscape, understand what the data is, and then helps the customers in terms of planning their journey. Uh, we call it a DX planning, and DXaaS is basically the SAP Digital Transformation as a Service, and this platform helps anyone from the CIO to any level of consultants in terms of orchestrating the complete transformation. So if you really look at it from the Gartner and Forrester, the kind of planning that you have to do towards the digital transformation, the kind of orchestration, the modelings, the twin builder that you have to do as part of leveraging on the new technologies, and the testing part on how fast your processes can be decomposed or deconstructed, and new processes that's emerging, and how do we make sense of it, and how do we do a complete reengineering and process optimization of the existing processes. So there are two, three ways, right? The normal way would be to call for a consulting company, and if you're like $10 billion plus company, then you call the big consulting companies, run some workshops for 6 months, 1 year, come up with a plan for the next 5 years, and then you could move. Or the other option is to look inwards, look at the data that you have for the last 15, 20 years, and make some sense out of it, and see how we can rebuild or reimagine the core that you have, and then how we build the new economies in terms of driving the business. And that's the whole idea of KTern as a platform. So why I'm spending so much time here is it's a new product positioning, it's a new product offering in the market, and it combines 5 streams. One is digital maps, which should be equivalent of your Google Maps, right? But then it would try and make sense of your processes, your data, and then give a complete picture of what is currently running. And then you have projects and process in combination, which would be able to orchestrate the new processes in terms of how you want to redefine it. And one of the important part, and which is the scope of this webinar, is the testing, right? So typically when you look at customers and partners in the SAP ecosystem as a whole, the number of test cases that has to be generated when you move from one version of SAP to the new version, and to ensure that the processes are in place and testing has been done, um, that's what the platform provides. Apart from the other 5 streams, testing is one of the important factor in terms of how you ensure new processes are in place, how you ensure the release cycles are taken care, and then the mines itself is more of a providing the information about the processes in terms of how it's running, the KPIs to drive a process and things like that. So I'll be able to show a bit of everything on a live demo and also go slightly deeper on the labs. Now, this product is available on the SAP store, so you should be able to subscribe there as well. And these are the list of references. And why should we be doing it? I started a company, a SAP consulting company, and ran it for 15 years. I'm still in the board of that company, and decided to do the startup. This is 3 years old, but it's a platform. It's also listed in G2, and these are the list of different alliances, partners, customers that are currently using KTern at some level. Yeah. Um, and yeah, of course, it's so coming to the agenda, the challenges in SAP testing and what the SAP community is facing and why we should be talking about it, because I've handled more than 2,000 projects in my capacity of running SAP business. So I think I have some credibility in terms of understanding where the challenges would be. So in the sense, this whole platform was built taking an empathetic view of how the SAP ecosystem can be driven in terms of a digital transformation as a service. And then a quick look at how the testing world itself is evolving in terms of manual to automated testing, and from automation to autonomous testing. Autonomous is still in its early days, but there's quite a lot that we could imagine in terms of what it can do for the testing space. And then I would do a demo as well in terms of how you can discover the processes, how you can do a generation of test scripts, how you can do the API-based testing, UI-based testing, and also any changes in the processes. And if you have a list of test cases, what is that you should be testing to ensure that there is a smooth release in an enterprise level. And then, of course, the documentation, which the product or the platform KTern itself will be able to drive. And the benefits, of course, I'll talk later. But that's the agenda itself for the day. So with that, right. So if you really look at the challenges that we have in terms of SAP testing, they're quite a lot, and we just kept this slide to ensure that the testing is quite intimidating in terms of the workflows, the kind of architecture that SAP has, right from a billion-dollar enterprise to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, the kind of architecture, the kind of interfaces that they would have imagined, the processes across varied software, and how do you ensure that the testing is done end to end, and combine that with the volume of data that needs to be tested. So you might have a set of data in the last 15, 20 years, and what do we do with that when you move to the new world, or when you do a release cycle, or when you do a functional pack upgrade, or if you're someone who has already moved to S4HANA and you're in the older version of say 1600X, and you want to get into uh, 2020 or 1909 or the latest version, because SAP recommends to do an upgrade every 2 years, even if you're on S4HANA. Um, and it kind of helps you to see how we can do different data sets, right? I'm sorry, I'm just not able to go with the flow because there's a chat that keeps coming. Right. So the how do we make sense of the different data sets that you have, which are valid? Because when you typically look at the projects, it is more randomized testing that consultants would do. which might result in errors. So they might check a few variations. They would not know the materiality of which test cases to be tested, and then you have very limited downtime when you do a conversion or a new implementation, and the cutover time is very less. So typically you end up doing some randomized testing, and then you clear it, and then you go into the run mode, and then you look at things and kind of bring into the stability part. And it's always left to a set of testers and the subject matter experts to identify the crucial test cases and do a test on that only. And that, in fact, leads to lots of errors and the system not getting tested properly. On top of it, the tools that you have in the market that's been built for the last 15 years, 10 years, there is a management part, there is a bit of automation part, then there is a bit of execution part, but then combining all that and putting together in one platform. And even if you look at it closely, it is left to a set of testing consultants to drive it, and there is a coding involved in terms of how they can do it. So there's quite a lot of uh, reinvention or reimagination that you can do in terms of how you go about doing your testing. And then uh, coupled that with the go no go decision on a go live date, and tracking who has worked on what and which subject matter expert has tested things, and have a complete visibility and transparency in terms of driving a SAP transformation. These are but these are set of challenges that we would be facing in terms of how we can drive a proper testing, right? So the other thing is, the other day while talking to a CIO, he mentioned, there are a set of test cases that we have, but I'm not sure if we can reuse it because it's still lying in a Word document and Excel, and there should be a team that can make some sense out of it and drive the complete testing procedure. So testing, in essence, if you have to keep moving or making advancement in terms of technologies, in terms of adapting the third platform of AAML or blockchain if you're a banking industry, and how do we make use cases, how do we ensure which one to absorb, and how do we run these test cases, then that's what KTern comes up with a list of functionality and use cases and features that you can expand to your system. So with that, I'm sure you would have faced a list of challenges. So there is a poll that's being run by my teammates, if you're able to answer, so that I'll be able to uh, kind of structure my presentation that way. We have a varied set of audience today, right from a CIO to a consultant. So I'll try and speak a language that everyone understands, but please bear with me in terms of how we structure it. All right, so I'll give it another 10 seconds before I move to my next slide. All right, so while the poll keeps happening, if you really look at most of the analyst reports and how testing has evolved, and what is happening to the testing as a business, mostly it's still manually driven, right? And there are generic tools that's available in the market, and there are few specific tools from SAP itself. But here we have a platform, KTern, which is more in terms of trying to democratize how you do a transformation. But if you really look at it, 80% of the testing is still manual, right? There are tools, but the effectiveness of tools is still a question. People use it for test management to a certain extent, for preparation, for storage, but in terms of automation, there's quite a lot that happens. And with the evolution of API first development as far as SAP is concerned as well, in terms of their new cloud version of S4HANA Cloud, single tenant or multi-tenant, where the complete SAP is more API driven. There's quite a lot that we could do in terms of API based testing as well. So that's where we are getting into. Just a quick analogy of where uh, the world of testing is getting into, or you know, um, how testing is getting evolved from manual to more of autonomous driving. So if you really look at the analogy of uh, the biggies of Google and where there's quite a lot of emphasis on autonomous driving, and if you have to juxtapose that with where the testing world is going, there's it's still early days for autonomous testing, but there is an attempt made by our platform as well in terms of moving towards autonomous testing, right? So, I mean, the screen is self-explanatory, but just to give an idea of where the autonomous testing is going in terms of, um, where we are right now, and then if you really closely look at it, the of course the level, there are 6 levels that we talk about, and the literature that talks about, and starting from level 1, which is very manual, and the tester has more control in terms of testing and verifying the changes in baseline, and then you move to level 2, which is more of an assisted automation. And most of you must be either in one of these 3 levels, I'm sure, and uh, where there is a test script that's being returned, and any change in the baseline and how SAP is being tested. SAP, typically the usage of tool has been very less, at least in or it is usually outsourced to some other system integrator, while one system integrator does the complete implementation. The testing is usually given to someone else as a third party, that's how the risk of the quality is being taken care by the CIOs. But there are better ways in how you can reimagine and redo it. There are partial automation where there is a little bit of AI intervention in terms of how the changes are happening, and when you go to conditional automation, where you give a set of rules in terms of how testing is done. And then, of course, a complete automation, and in case of autonomous, it comes up with its own set of scripts. There are quite a few companies startups that are doing quite a lot in this space. We are one of them as well. And so, right. So with that, I know I'm asking lots of polls, but it is only to make our presentation better, or adapt it to what you wanted, and what the world is looking for. So please do vote on this poll so that it helps us to understand more. Typically, the scenarios are is very hybrid in terms of how the testing gets done. Right, it's both manual, bit of automation, and then the test manager leaves the organization, then it comes to manual, and then he comes up with a new set of tools. So this is how typically it goes on. But I think hybrid is here to stay. Now, while you're doing this poll, I would want to move to the next slide and then launch the demo itself. So if you look at the digital transformation testing and our approach on how we go about doing the testing for the business processes, and this is a typical use case. There are at least 15 to 20 use cases on how the platform itself can be used. But I've just taken and making an assumption here that if you have an existing ECC or any other SAP box, um, our platform, which is very cognitive in nature. When I say cognitive, it's just not a workplace where you collaborate with a set of people, but it does more in terms of understanding what your SAP is doing, and picks up a list of processes, right? So if you have, like, at the T code level, if you have say 300 processes, and that combined with around 3 times, and with different data types and variants. So the bot that we have kind of does a discovery in terms of understanding how the process has been mapped in your existing system, right? Now, typically, it would take like 3 to 4 months for someone to get into SAP and understand, but this, and we have some benchmarking results, it takes like a week's time, and that's on the higher side because my team is going to come hard on me. They typically do it in 2 3 days. The platform is capable of doing it in a week's time, assuming it's a very complex landscape that you have. We can completely map, or my platform, the KTern platform, completely maps your processes and understand what is currently there. Once it does that at the process level, it does materiality scoring, and we call it a VVV analysis, which is value, volume, and velocity. What it means is the number of transactions that has been run in your current SAP, combine that with your configuration and few of the logs, our platform, KTern platform, would be able to give a mark or a percentage, or sort it based on the most recently used or the most critical parts of your processes, and that would help us in terms of preparing for your testing when you get into the testing mode, right? So that happens, and I'll show that in few minutes in the demo as well. And once that part is done, it kind of segregates it based on scenarios, if you can call it, or based on business processes at a highest level. It can do from order to cash, procure to pay, record to revenue, or it can drill it down to the next level in terms of scenarios and subject matter experts that you would do. And then do a complete assignment in terms of who are the users who would be involved in terms of testing when a particular process is getting dismantled. And then when you come to the stage of execution, this could be API based or UI based. Of course, when I say API and UI based, you also have the test management part of doing it manually as well, maintaining it in the platform. And once the execution gets done, it provides a list of documentation. Before the documentation, if there are any defects that you might come out of the testing, that is automatically given, and you have a list of defects before you move to the next level. And then once you get into the run mode, it does the monitoring of any changes in the processes, and when there's a release cycle, a function pack upgrade, or when you move from the older version of S/4HANA to a new version, you still can drive it using the monitoring bot. And the whole thing in terms of with COVID and pandemic and people working from remote locations, can still drive your go live. There is a sign-off bot, which is more of a workflow in terms of getting assigned to who the users are and who should be testing it. So you have a complete transparency, because end of the day, digital transformation, the tool is one part of it, or the technology is a part of it. It is all about people and how they handle the change, how they go about driving the new process. And it is about a shared responsibility in terms and shared accountability in terms of um, how they go about doing this. And then you have the management bot, right? So there's a complete transparency of how the whole testing happens. And yeah, so let me jump into the demo. But before that, I just wanted to talk about the benchmarking exercise that we have done so far, and that's continuously surprising us in terms of the level of automation that you could do. So if you're doing a testing for like 100 days, then you could do it in 30 days. Typically, the testing would happen for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, but there's quite a lot of reduction that you can do. The best part is the quantum of errors that comes up in manual testing, where you slip something and where you don't do the complete recommended testing. That's taken care by the platform, right? So there's an end-to-end automation starting from the management, planning, creation of scenarios, test cases, consultants. And the idea of all these new technology is increased productivity, and there is less defects. It is very simple to use, no coding. Uh, the test creation, it's a SaaS product, and can be done by someone with some understanding of the business process. No code, API based testing is possible. We also have a three-dimensional approach to the UI based testing, which has self-healing test. There is an intervention in terms of AI, data-based testing. When I say data-based testing, the data that you have in SAP, it combines both agile and activate approach to testing, and of course auto documentation. And then there's autonomous testing console as well, and there's quite a lot in terms of the process modeler and things like that. So there's quite a lot of exciting features in terms of how you want to drive your digital transformation. With that, let me get into the demo. We see. Right. A quick check. Jacob, are you able to see my screen, the KTern.com website? Or...
Yeah, Ratna.
All right, thank you. So you have most of the information here, KTern.com. You can look at the demo. It's, as I said, it's a cognitive digital transformation as a service platform, and there's quite a lot of material and the resources. If you go to the content repository, you have quite a lot in terms of how the product is getting evolved. It's listed in the SAP store. It's got a 4.5 rating reviews. So you could take a look at there as well. It's got a lot of content on the internet. Yeah, so you could get started with the demo here. Yeah, so this gets me into the live app. So I will get started here. I'll go launch the demo app. Right, so you could also do the demo app. It's a SaaS product. I just enter my email address. If it's your official email address, it would be better in terms of looking at what we have to show you. So you can, as a CIO, as a project manager, as a PMO, as a CEO, any kind of personas, because what we realized was SAP as a product is not used by one single user. So there's an empathetic view that we have taken, and anyone in an organization can use this platform. So you can drive any kind of SAP transformation using this platform. So if you really look at it, there is a My Workspace, and so you can drive your team completely in terms of the different things that a team is currently working. It integrates with your calendars. So the idea is to capture all the project moments at one place. Because what we have seen is once a project is over, the assets that come, the content that come out of that project is never been reused, right? So here, we have ensured our product captures all the moments, and that's converted into a knowledge base so that that gets retained. And even if people leave, the new set of team can take over and see what was handled in a particular project. So you have a complete list of um, tasks that you could manage, and that's the digital workspace. So anyone in the SAP ecosystem, be it the SAP end users, or if you're a partner and you wanted to drive a project, or if you're SAP, you can do it. So you have a complete way of automating and governing your digital transformation and workplace at one place, and it serves as a complete collaboration hub, right? And then on the left-hand side, if you see the complete hub in terms of the sign-off, the project timeline, the control center, dashboard, the smart analytics in terms of risk that you can. Because one of the things that we have seen with SAP projects is it doesn't fail because of SAP, but it is about the change management. So we have got quite a lot of way on how to track it, that's something that I've covered in the earlier webinar. So if you go to our website, and if you go to the list of webinars that we have done so far, you could pick up and see the other streams that we have run, and then you go to the digital maps, which basically which I explained earlier as well. Before getting into this one, I want to also mention why it is cognitive in nature, right? That's an important part. So um, although there are products in the market which calls as a digital workplace, that's more about collaborating and doing a set of meetings and things like that. But in our case, the platform is able to connect to SAP. It's very non-invasive in the nature, in the sense SAP is more, we understand the architecture of SAP, and you could connect to the SAP landscape using this one, right? So you could connect to S/4HANA ECC or Ariba. It could be a SF. You could connect to anything that you want from here. There is a connector that you might have to download that runs on your sys here. This is a demo system, and then you just connect as if you connect to an SAP system. So once it gets connected, it starts scanning and understanding the SAP, right? So what happens then is, and typically I would take a use case of you're trying to move from um, you know uh, you're trying to move from one version of SAP to another version of SAP. The first thing that it does is it does a complete assessment of what is there in the existing system, and gives a list of processes that's available in your current system. And there are different views that at how you can look at it in terms of processes or in terms of the different modules. And it gives you a list of the processes that's currently mapped, and which is and there's a scoring mechanism I told you, and then it also gives you the list of users, and this forms the basis for us to do the planning. And then you go to the process assessment, it gives a materiality analysis and all these icons here, and it's a demo system, so you can drive in and see what is there. So it does a complete assessment of your processes at the different levels, to the transaction level, right? And then the stakeholders here are basically the users who've been using it predominantly. So we make use of your config tables and the logs that is there in the existing system, and get a complete abstract of the different processes. And if you click on this, you would be able to see a much more detailed way of how your procurement, your sales department, your finance department, how they are being configured. So that would be the first step. And uh, listen, this is something that is completely based on the data that's present in the ECC. So this forms the starting point for us in terms of planning our test data, right? And it gives more other information which I'm not getting into right now. But then if you go to the scope of the webinar itself, it's about the testing, and I'm not talking about the rest of the things, rest of the streams here. But let me go to the uh, digital labs, and what basically happens here is the processes that we have got by scanning your SAP, and then we have, of course, this we can define it as you want in terms of how we want to drive your bots. There are quite a lot of bots that works in the backend to drive this whole autonomous testing, right? So the first one is the discovery bot, which I showed you earlier. And then it prepares the test cases in terms of how you want to drive it. And then you have execution, which can be API or UI based as well. And then you have the complete documentation, the monitoring during runtime, sign off, and the management part. So let me go to the status console and go ahead and launch this one. So it takes me to a process wizard. Now, if you're a new implementation, right? If you're going for a new implementation, there is a way how we we could do that as well. But this, I would have taken it from an existing landscape where it comes up, the platform, KTern itself comes up with a list of different processes across the different departments, finance, sales and distribution, materials management, PP, and then you have a catalog view itself in terms of how you want to drive it. And then you go to the prepare. This is where it gets interesting, right? So if you do a prepare bot, and if you look at the list of test cases, mostly it is API based that it has run so far, and then there is also a UI based that we have here. And when you look at these test scripts, it gives you the kind of and this is based on the process map that you got earlier and the script sequence itself in terms of how it has run, right? And this is primarily, if you look at it, it could be unit testing for a consultant, or you could do an integrated or a string testing in terms of combining a couple of processes. So that is also possible, and you have the complete testing scenarios. I'm not going here, but if you go to the execute mode, this is where you get the results, the evidences in terms of how a particular bot has run, and the evidence is captured here in terms of whether it has passed or failed, and that could be a UI based as well. So if you look at the so we have a connector which can do a Fiori based or a UI based, which it could be SAP GUI as well. And if you look at the screenshots, it captures all the screens where the different data was entered, and it gives you a complete scenario of how a particular testing was done. So these are the two examples. One is the API based, and it also throws a list of defects after it has run, and it captures more of and most of the tool in the market does this UI based using three-dimensional testing, but ours is slightly different in terms of how we understand the HTML5 and the unstable IDs that comes with it, and how we do a three-dimensional approach. And then there is a complete analysis and the time that it has taken, and this could be helpful in terms of doing a regression testing, and it could do more. So we have both the API based testing as well as the UI based testing, and then it throws the defects as well, right? So and one of the typical thing that we would have seen is there is a separate set of consultants working on documentation, and even if they document, we are not sure where it is. But here, based on how the product and this is configurable, the kind of documentation that you want to create, and this saves a whole lot of time for the consultants and the consulting company. And the end of the day, the customers would also be able to see what their assets are. I hope you are able to see the downloaded document that I'm scrolling. Jacob, is the document visible?
Yes, it is right now.
Right. So this is configurable, but it would have a list of test cases and how you ran the steps. So that's auto documentation. You don't see that. And the complete monitoring, right, in terms of how a set of test cases was executed, the number of bot plans, the scenarios, the one I mentioned in terms of the value, volume, and velocity analysis in terms of different T codes, and which has higher significance in terms of running. Uh, that's a complete dashboard that you have in terms of the test statistics and the defects that has come out of it. Now, imagine most of the thing being done by the platform itself based on the data that you have, and with the less manual intervention. We wouldn't say we are 100% autonomous, but that's where, uh, but we are close. We are close than most of the products, and then you have a complete sign off, which is more of an orchestration in terms of your complete test suite and how you want to drive it. And there are customers who are using it, and enormous value that they see, and this sign off has a complete view of how you want to build it, and have a go no go before a live system that happens, and then once you do that, it's on the run mode. You can keep and when you go between different releases, it helps you to manage the complete testing, right? So if you look at it as a whole, the view is the life of a test engineer or test manager, or be it an IT analyst, a functional technical consultant, process owners, project managers, delivery heads, IT directors, CIOs. So there is one single platform that can stay with you, connected cognitively, and help you in terms of completely driving it. And then of course, you have the management part. You have a few things here in terms of projects and processes. So if you're like, if you're a new uh, if you're a new greenfield implementation and you want to set up your whole process, even that is possible. But yeah, I'm not getting into the process part of it. This in combination with the projects is something new, and I don't think you have any other tool. There are few things from SAP itself, but in terms of democratizing the whole way of how things can be done and what we can do here, it's a completely new attempt, a new product in terms of reimagining how we wanted to do the testing itself. So the test suite cockpit, it does give you the different management capabilities. The idea is, if you have to follow activate methodology or your own methodology, the idea is to start your testing quite early in terms of these movements, so that you don't you're in complete control of ensuring that the um, project is able to go on in a smoother fashion. So you have dashboards, you have a test plan coverage, you have a VVV analysis, the defects, so the complete management and the reporting that you want to do in terms of driving it, that's there. And the best part, and this is something that maybe I've reserved it for the last few minutes. Once you are on a run mode, and there are and once you set it up and you have all these things, I've moved to something called digital minds, and there are a few recorded webinar sessions. But here the idea is to ensure that the processes that are mapped in your current system are compared to a KPI, and if there are any anomalies in terms of your business process, not and give some optimization potential. What we have is something called an autonomous enterprise release impact, which is again a bot in itself. What it does is, and typically for organizations like 10 billion plus or 15 billion or even 5 billion plus, and when there's a change management that happens, or a change impact analysis that you wanted to do, you're on a run mode, and you wanted to ensure, and imagine you have like 1,000 test cases, and when there's a change that is happening, you wanted to understand, you don't want to run through all those 1,000 test cases. You might want to run only with the few that's impacted, and that's what enterprise release impact does. Now, overall, this platform is made for SAP, specific to SAP, understands what it is, built by people who have been running SAP for 25, 30 years, not SAP as a company, but as consultants. And so we understand quite a lot of how the technology architecture works. And it provides you a list of impacted processes when you do a release management across different modules, and lets you know that which are the use cases that are impacted, that are the new test cases that needs to be created across the business processes, different stakeholders who should be involved, the impact of the UI processes and things like that. Now, with this, we'll be able to tell you, hey, listen, you don't have to test those 1,000 test cases. You just have to test 29, right? That saves lots of time. Now, of course, there are tools from SAP, but the experience and the journey part and how we want to drive it, uh, that's really the key, right? And which processes getting impacted, and what are the high impact things, and how it is linked to a particular test cases. Um, So yeah, that's the enterprise release impact part, which is again something new. You wouldn't see it available in the market right now. Now, with that, I will stop here. If there is, uh, you know, if if there is any questions or anything else, I would be ready to take it. And I will hand over the session now to Jacob. And but I'm available for any questions. I will look at the question answer tab and keep responding. Well, I would like to thank everyone for taking time and attending this session. Really appreciate it. It's a great day, and hope to see you more in the upcoming webinars. And over to you, Jacob.
Mm, Thank you, Ratan. That was an amazing presentation. There's this question in the chat window. Jim Mueller asked if we have a wholesale rate versus what we offer in the SAP store for integrators to resell to the clients.
I'm not able to see that question. Can let me look at it? Is your which question is this?
It's in the chat window, Ratan.
Okay, it's in the chat window. Okay, and can you just read it for me? I'm not able to see
Yeah,
it.
sure. Do you have wholesale rate versus the SAP store for integrators to resell to clients?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So the whole idea of this product is to have it be driven through the partner ecosystem of SAP. If I'm able to understand, that's the question. Is that right, Jacob?
It's asking for a value.
Value.
Like, do we have offers when we are offering this to integrators who can resell to other
Yeah,
people?
yeah, yeah. We would be, in fact, we are driving the program for the system integrators alone, which we should be able to do an event specifically for the SAP ecosystem, the partner ecosystem, where you it's a month-long program that we are doing on the DXaaS, and we should be able to give you more information if you can get in touch with our alliance team in terms of driving it. Yeah, there is quite a lot of offers and other things, but yeah, the idea is again to ensure that DXaaS is democratized and available to everyone, irrespective of the size they are. Make it simple, easy to understand, making it better in terms of how they want to do the transformation. So, yeah, the idea is to drive it to the SAP ecosystem. Yeah.
There's another question from Harish. He asked to clarify what the scope of the tool is. Is it only for S4 HANA or does it extend to BW for HANA and Excel add-ins and so on?
Listen, it's a platform, and there's not any platform in the world which is trying to democratize the DXaaS. So there's much more to it than just a tool. So you might want to get into the demo. You might want to get in touch with our customer success team or myself. Do drop a message, and I can spend more time in terms of making you understand. I'll be able to connect with the SAP system and show the kind of magic that it can do. Yeah.
And Sandeep asked if our product is SAP certified.
Well, yeah, it is. It is SAP certified. It's in the SAP store, so yeah, it is SAP certified.
And is a KTern cloud-based only.
It is cloud-based only, SaaS.
And there's another question from Harish. He asked, what is the approach for the affected test case count determined in the impact analysis?
Can you repeat that question?
What is the approach for the affected test case count determined in the impact analysis?
See, the approach itself is, as I mentioned, it's cognitive in nature. And when I say it's a workplace, it's not a collaboration hub. It is cognitive in nature. It understands the data that is present in SAP, and we understand the architecture. So we kind of read through the logs and config and master data and few other things, and then make some sense out of it, and provide you a list of impacted cases. So yeah, so it's
That's another question.
more like assessment of key bombs and how it happens in the release cycle. So that's how it happens.
Sandeep asked if our product works with Solman.
The product, the platform itself is interoperable in the sense there is a marketplace that will be launching quite soon, and but in terms of integration, it integrates with all the standard products that's available in the market. So yeah, so Solman is a possibility as well.
I guess we've answered all your questions. So thank you, Ratna, and thank you all for joining today's session. We hope that the session was fun and insightful as you'd hoped for. And we hope to see all of you in KTern's upcoming events, as well as you can expect to hear from us very soon. In the meantime, you can follow us on LinkedIn or check out our website at KTern.com and get in touch with us. Alternatively, you can reach out to Ratna via LinkedIn or his email ID. And signing off until next time, this is Jacob and the team from KTern. Thank you all for joining. Have a very nice day.